to Venice Island from a distance. Venice Island is a community-based performing arts center that believes in the power of arts and entertainment as a way of bringing people together and fostering community. As such, we have a responsibility to amplify the important work of marginalized voices in our community and to advance the conversation surrounding race and the arts, a conversation that has reached a fever pitch in light of recent civil unrest. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to have these voices live on our stage. So instead, every Monday night through the end of August, we'll be posting informal interviews with artists and collaborators in our city who have much to say about the role of arts and culture in the midst of racial, political, health, and financial crises. I'm Darryl Lyons, one of the hosts from this series, and today I have joining me Darryl Charles, who is a phenomenal stand-up artist, comedy artist. He is also a improviser extraordinaire. Darryl created his debut album, Black Gentrifier, which debuted at #3 on the iTunes comedy charts, which is like pretty darn amazing. He performs, teaches, and coaches improv comedy, and he's been a member of Comedy Sports Philadelphia since 2011, right? 2011, Darryl. And he's also the co-host of DTF, the Darryl and Timmery Fun Hour, which is like a hysterical comedy game show about sex education, and he's just a phenomenal human. So thank you, Darryl, so much for being here.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. I do a lot of things. That is true. I don't
Yeah.
think it's phenomenal, but whatever. Yeah, sure. It is. It is. It is. I am phenomenal.
Yeah, it is phenomenal. Well, and I'm so curious. I mean, this is like a really dark and difficult time, I think, in our nation's history and
Hmm.
in the city of Philadelphia. Like, so how are you able to blend comedy with what's happening in the world? Like, how are you doing that?
I mean, I think I've always done it. That's what comedians do. I guess, yeah, I'm calling myself a comedian, but like my whole life, I've been taking bad things that happened and making fun of them and using humor to lighten the load of life, right? I mean, I could blame it on being a middle child, right? That's what middle children do. We're the adjudicators, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't know because I'm the oldest, and
Ah,
so I just boss people around.
see, right, yeah. See,
Yeah.
the older one is the lieutenant carrying out the will of the leaders of the household, and then the middle child is the one like, can we all just relax and let's talk this through? And I need to get my point across. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just being like the court jester, I guess. So yeah, like my whole life I've been making fun of things.
When did you know that you wanted to pursue comedy as more of a vocation as opposed to a hobby?
Oh, I mean, the romantic side of the romantic story is that the first time I ever got on stage and got a laugh, I knew this was for me. But I mean, I was already like, out of college working a real job when I got the idea to do it for real, right? Like as opposed to being the funny guy at parties, like being like, well, let me go and actually try to do stand-up comedy. Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess that was I don't even remember what year that was, 2000 and I guess it'd be like 2009, something like that.
Yeah. Well, and what does it look like now? I mean, what did it look like sort of coming into COVID? And then what does your kind of life as a performer look like now?
Oh boy, big plans before this all hit, right? I had the album coming out, and it was going to be a whole thing about promoting that and going to shows with physical copies on me and selling those and getting the word out, flyering and postering and um, things like, well, maybe not postering, but like, getting on a real promotional kind of deal in public and at shows, um, pushing the album and trying to use that buzz to get into more places, right? So it was supposed to be like a big travel thing for me, going different places and hawking my wares. But you know, And
Yeah,
the president decided that we shouldn't do that.
I know. I mean, it's just devastating. And I think like really, I mean, the fact that we're talking about the role of art in the middle of a pandemic and also in the middle of civil racial unrest that that's been happening for forever, but it's been coming to light now. It's really, I mean, I think we're really just seeing like that it is a trope, right, to be a struggling artist in America. Like I think that there's definitely a thing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, so what is happening then with the album now? Like what's happening?
I mean, you know what's happening? People are watching this and going, I think I want to go get it. Ooh, let me see. If I put Darryl Charles in this search, what's going to pop up? Is what's happening. Just trying to promote it as I can, getting it streaming in the places. I think that the last big move as far as that was concerned is I got confirmation that my album's streaming on Pandora, which is nice. They have a big
Oh,
comedy community kind of thing.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So tell me, so what's the name of the album, the new album that just came
oh
out?
yeah, it's called Black Gentrifier. Yeah,
Ah,
we
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. Okay, right. Which I did say that it was your debut album that premiered as number 3 on the comedy charts, but I don't know why I wasn't putting two and two together that like that was the same album. So that's on me.
it's like, oh, it's the album. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and so Black Gentrifier, like talk a little bit about that. Like what's the premise?
Oh well, I mean, the idea of being a Black gentrifier is, because of my schooling and that of my wife, when we decided to, you know, plant roots originally in Philly, we were like, well, we want to get a nice house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing too expensive, just something that it looks like there are like working families and a decent, community organization and things like that. A place that had like some kind of history, and then we moved. We ended up getting an apartment before we bought a house, but in the neighborhood where we got the apartment, it was in the midst of gentrification, and we kind of saw it start to happen and caught some of the flack for it. Not the flack I caught for it was I got pulled over a lot because you know it was kind of the way that it worked, that if someone that looked like me was driving around in a car, you were going to get a little more harassed. So when things like that happened, my wife and I would have some fun conversations about like, this is what gentrification looks like. It just so happens that we look like the people who are typically pushed out in one of those situations, where we're not the people, like we're the people pushing out, but we look like the people being pushed out. So you get to feel it from both sides. And, it, it's a weird, it is a weird place to be when you think about it that way. And it just had us like questioning, like, what is our role in it? And what does that feel like? And thankfully I'm a comedian, so I get to make light of it as opposed to trying to deal with it in a crazy serious way.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, right now more than ever, I think that that content would be of incredible value to people just because it really forces you to examine, like, kind of, it forces each of us to examine our role in this system of supremacy, but
Hmm.
also, as you point out, like, examining it from a place that is more comedic, right? And maybe still goes to some deep places, but like isn't painful, right? Hopefully.
Right. I mean, I think it's not that it's not painful. Like, I was very upset every time I had to go to court, and I was very upset when I would watch certain people be treated one way and certain people be treated another way. But yeah, like I said, like, the though I'll do the research and look things up and find out about redlining and why does the neighborhood look like this time and not like this time and stuff like that. Like, I'll do the research, but thankfully, my art can be a catharsis for that kind of stuff, right? So I get to make jokes that I try to put some of the factual information in it while making fun of the entire, you know, making fun of like that dichotomy, right? Like bringing light to it through humor and just talking about like what that feels like to be, it's like your Finn in the last Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just want to clarify that when I said about painful, I meant more for the consumer. Like I am very
Oh.
clear that yeah, that we laugh at the things that are traumatizing to us, right? Like
Hmm.
in the world, in the space of comedy. So it's like I am not delegitimizing your pain, and at the same time, I think maybe for a consumer, it's like perhaps less emotionally um, devastating to have an entry point that is comedic as opposed to,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I would hope so, and I would also hope, and maybe this was where I kind of no, I don't think this is where I started with it, but like what I've come to notice is that there are a lot of people like that, right? As you have the limited social mobility that we do have in this country, you're going to have people who end up in these spots where, on the, if you look at it from a very far away, the idea of people with means or people with upward mobility showing up and spending money in these ecosystems that have been kept out of money for so long is a great thing. But then you look at it on the ground and you see that the way that it happens and who ends up benefiting is kind of screwy. But like the thing is that there is an entire there's a whole host of black people who are kind of in this situation, right? Like I'm the first in my family. Like my parents didn't go to college. Their parents didn't go to college, so like that sort of thing. Like my brother and I, first ones kind of thing. So like there is that population, and I feel like in entertainment we're there isn't a lot that's directly addressing us and our experiences. And so like while I think it's cool for people not in that demographic to see somebody talk about it and have an entry point into that perspective, I think it's also very cool for people who are feeling that to be able to see somebody address those issues and talk about it. I would hope intelligently as well as in a humorous way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it speaks to the larger issue of representation and that the essential nature of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, Darryl, because so the album was already something that you've been working on and getting out there into the marketing space. So like right now, are you more in marketing mode? Or are you more in like content creation mode? Like tell me a little bit about where you are now in terms of.
As far as the album's concerned, yeah, I'm in marketing mode. But as a comic and a writer, I'm in content creation mode kind of always. And you know, yeah, especially now, uh, especially now, given like everyone should be at home, and is there's a lot of like online shows. The nice thing about online shows or online showcases are that the world is flat, so there's no longer like this geographic limitation. So people who want to see me but are too far away to show up at a random bar have this opportunity to, which is great. But that also means that typically it's people who know me and have already bought my album. So if they're gonna see me do jokes, I can't do the ones that are on the album.
Yeah, right, got it.
Right.
So you got to come up with those new jokes.
Yeah, you have to do something to keep it because I was doing a show and like I had new stuff that I'm working on and then I was like, oh, I'll just throw in an old one, which is what you do when you do stand up, right? You sandwich your new stuff with old things and blah blah. And then I did a joke that's on the album and just watched them go.
Oh
Hmm. Yeah,
no.
that is what he said, and it's like, oh, the internet, but yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, while I'm marketing it and while I'm trying to get it out to new people, which is why you do things like this. Hello, if you don't know who I am, please go get Black Gentrifier. It's you're still always in a content creation kind of mode. I think just as a comic.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I mean, I think also you're a stand-up comic and also an improviser, which I think is like a really cool blend. So can you talk about a little bit more about like how that works for you?
The way it works for me is I started taking improv classes the same time I started going to open mics. So I mean, not kind of, I've been developing those skills at the same time, if not at the same pace, but I guess you could say the same pace. I don't know. And so I think I have had the fortune to be able to, like, while learning both schools of thought at the same time, being able to develop the skills necessary to succeed in both in tandem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a great dynamic blend because I've certainly been in the audience at stand-up shows before where like maybe there's been a weird audience interaction or there's been something and like you can always tell when a stand-up comic can roll with it and when they
Hmm.
can't. And so like have you had those experiences?
Oh yeah, and it's the thing. I would tell people, like, it's just time that gets you used to that kind of stuff, time and experience. But I do honestly believe that, yeah, the amount of time that I've spent doing improv, like, helped me for those situations. I think, especially when I was in the beginning, it was just all the stage time. Like, I was in an improv group, so we performed monthly, and then we would practice weekly, and then I'd be going to open mics 3, 4 times a week, and so it was just a lot of time on stages, even if the stage is just under one light, next to a pool table. But like, it was a lot of time performing, which just gets it's the reps that you kind of need when you first start. But then, in the moment at a show, something happens, and you have these improvisational skills to rely on, right? You're very quick to yes and yourself. You're very quick to, like, not flip out when things go off script. And a lot of stand up, well, at least for me, when developing jokes and stuff, it is kind of scripted, even though it's like no one knows the script except me, so I can lie, right? But like, it's neat to make that transition from something that you want to say to something that is just observational on what's in the room. And I think it definitely, the trick is to make the audience feel like it's all made up. So when you can kind of seamlessly go to things that are made up and then go to things that aren't, uh, yeah, you get to lie.
Yeah, right. What actor doesn't like to lie, right?
It's what we do. We're
Yeah.
all paper people. We're not even real. There's nothing behind this.
Yeah, right. But also, I mean, just back to the whole notion of your versatility, both in terms of like being able to bridge that gap from stand up to improv to act, like all the things that you do. But I also noticed, I mean, so you do a sex ed comedy hour show, and then you
Hmm.
also do like family friendly comedy sports and everything in between. So yeah, like how do you get your brain to kind of categorize into like, yes, I can say this in this space and no, I can't say it here and those kinds
I I used to be worried about that, like, especially when I first started doing comedy sports, because I'd been watching comedy sports from the time that I started doing comedy. Like, when I started doing comedy, a woman I was dating, who turned out to be my wife, was like, "Oh, you want to do stand up? Well, have you heard of comedy sports?" And then she took me there, and that's how I found out about it. Um, but so, like, I knew it was family friendly. But then when I auditioned for the company and got in, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't curse. I can't, these sorts of things." But really, it was like the first show I ever did, match that I ever did. There was like a child right in the front row and was like looking like full eyed and like ready for a good time. And I was like, well, I'm never going to curse. Like, there's no way that I can do that. Like, all the nerves of your first performance in the thing, the place is full and everybody's cheering, and you just see one baby just sitting there, just like, and it's like, yeah, all right, there's no way I'm going to slip. Ah. And, I think it's also good. Uh, I think when you're in those places, right? If I'm sitting here talking about sex ed, I can do it without cursing, but because I know I'm around adults, I'll let a couple, f bombs fly, or I'll say something in a particularly graphic way that I wouldn't do in front of a child. But yeah, I guess it's just about where you are. But as a comic, when you're trying to, you know, when you're writing jokes, it's about word efficacy, and so You're paying attention to the words that you say, when you're crafting a joke. If you've done stand up for long enough, you understand that like if you curse at the right spot, it'll really work. If you curse at the wrong spot, it can really go the wrong way. So you're always kind of being mindful of your speech.
Well, I think like especially right now too, I would imagine being mindful of your content as well, right? Because I'm sure there's certain things that you want to kind of talk about and other things that you would want to avoid.
Yeah, I think it's not a matter of avoiding it. It's trying to, when you decide to address it, what are you saying really, and like what is the point of it, right? So, you know, like the punching up, punching down thing. It's like you want to make fun of a situation, you can make fun of the situation, but is the butt of your joke a victim in this, or is the butt of your joke the perpetrator, or is the butt of your joke just the interaction between the two? And you know, these are the things that you're supposed to think about, and this is why it's not easy to do.
Right, right. But I also think like when we're talking about language and when we're talking about the importance of sort of who you choose to like, I don't know, like whether or not a certain person has like the bandwidth to be made fun of, right?
Hmm.
Versus another person who does not. Like, I think these are things that just people in their everyday life should be more attuned to, and they're not, and so yeah.
Yeah, I think to some degree there's that idea of like who deserves it and who doesn't, and that is up to the person talking, right?
Yeah.
But I don't even want to think of it as like who deserves it, but it's like, am I harming anybody when I speak this way? And if I am harming someone, am I harming people for their choices or for their situations? Right? And yeah, that's kind of how I try to think about that.
Well, and I think like right now, it seems just to me that comedy really could be used as a great social adhesive and a community builder. And so I'm just wondering, like, I mean, how have you noticed a difference in the community, like now versus before in that regard, before coming into this pandemic, or like what? I don't know.
In some ways, I've seen a lot of people from different places kind of meet and bond online, which is very cool. Even for DTF, I've been able to get, because everything's online now, I've been able to put on guests who live in LA. I've been able to put on guests who live in New York. Like for a show that we did live in Philly, those things are very hard, right, to do. And so, in my small way, it's nice to expose a comedian whose work I enjoy to an audience that I know that they probably don't get to perform in front of as much, if at all. So those sorts of things are really cool and nice. I mean, I guess you could say community building things, but like, yeah, there's just room for exposure and room to like find out about new people who you wouldn't have, and then be like, oh yeah, no, I'm a fan, and I think you should be able to like expose your art to these to new people.
Are there any performances that you've been able to do in this time that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, yeah, there are people in different places who are holding like these like internet shows. They'll use something like Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever to put on a comedy show. So like I've performed, like just yesterday I performed in a show in LA, which means that it was you know people who live in LA put on a Zoom show. So you would imagine that most of the people who were watching lived on the West Coast as opposed to the East Coast. So, you know, yeah, these things happen, and that's part of what we do now is trying to get on these like random shows that are produced out of random places. Hmm.
Right, but then you get like good exposure to different audiences, and like a joke that maybe does incredibly well in New York might not do as well in LA and vice versa, right? And so like I think you get to flex those comedy muscles.
Yeah, it's it's not the same as being live, but it surely is better than just sitting at home.
Right. Well, and so for people who are sitting at home watching this and want to kind of connect with you and want to find out more about your shows, can you give your website information and just any info on how people can link up with you?
Yeah, sure. You can go to darrylcomedy.com, DARRYL comedy.com, uh, and see things about me. My calendar's there. If I have gigs, they'll be on there. There are links to get my album, Black Gentrifier. If you don't want to do all that and just want to go straight to a place, you can go to darrylcharles.bandcamp.com and buy the album there. It's also available for streaming and buying in most of the places that you now get digital media. So, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, is there like something that you are hoping that anyone who watches the album, listens to the album, like, is there anything that you're hoping people who listen to the album will like take away, or like, is there like a message that you wanted to communicate with your listener and your comedy fan?
Sure. That message is follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Darryl underscore. And then also, if there are comedy places near you, go, hey, why haven't you had Darryl Charles on? That would be really great if you were to do that. And then like, yeah, the following part's important because then I can like look at I can analyze where people are that like me, and then use that to get into places that don't like me, or at least don't know who I am. So help.
Yeah, well, and I can just say, Darryl, as someone who has seen you perform and had the good grace to be on the stage with you, like you were hysterical, like in another league on another level. So my hope is that people will connect with you, they'll follow you, they'll buy the album, which again is Black Gentrifier, and laugh, right? Because like who couldn't use a laugh right now?
It's what else are you gonna do? It's better than the alternative, man. Just go ahead and giggle it up.
Yes, awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Darryl, for being with us. Thank you
Thank
to
you.
everyone watching. Also, a special shout out to our featured restaurant this week, which is the Manayunk Brewing Company. So order from them, support their business, and please join us next week on Venice Island from a distance when host Ryan Revel will speak to Mark Jared, founder and organizer of Out and About in Manayunk.
I figured out the algorithm to how we all respond to Trump news. Sorry to bring him up, but it's math. And the algorithm is disappointed plus surprised squared. That's how it works. And it works out because if you use FOIL, you realize that you're disappointed that you're disappointed, then you're disappointed that you're surprised. Then you're surprised that you're disappointed, and then you're surprised that you're surprised. That's how it works. Every time. You guys passed the 10th grade. That's good.